Okay, guys, so today we're going to be looking at this Crusades Socratic seminar document, and we're going to be focusing around this question: were the Crusades inevitable? So were they certain to happen? Were they unavoidable? So basically, were they always kind of bound to go to war, the Christians and the Muslims, or could they have never gone to war and figured it out some other way? So our directions: complete parts 1 and 2 of this document due Wednesday at 4 p.m. So you have today, Tuesday, and tomorrow, Wednesday, to do this doc. We will be having a virtual Socratic seminar on Thursday based off of this document. Check your Google Classroom for more info. So I just want to go over that before we actually go through this document. What that means is that on Thursday, so the day after, this is due on Wednesday, we are going to have Socratic seminars. So either with me or Mr. Ring or Ms. Bermudez, you're going to have times, a couple times throughout the day that you could log on to a Google Meet, and share your questions, share some responses, respond to others. Now, we understand that everyone might not be able to get on at the specific times that we give you. If you are unable to come to one of the live virtual Socratic seminars, there will be an alternate assignment posted for you that you will have to complete, answering questions, responding to questions, just in a written form by 4 p.m. on Thursday. I suggest just coming on to one of the seminars. Will probably only be about 15 minutes. If you respond once, then you'll get your point, you'll get your credit. Otherwise, you're going to have to do, the written document that will take you longer with responding to questions. Okay, so again, you do have Tuesday and Wednesday to do this document. So if you maybe wanted to do document A on Tuesday and then document B, or maybe you want to read both on Tuesday and then create your questions on Wednesday, however you want to split it up, that's what you can do. So document A is Pope Urban II's speech, the beginning of the First Crusade. The historical context, background on the speech and the Pope. Pope Urban II was the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, who called on all Christian men to join in the fight for the Holy Land during the First Crusade. Pope Urban II gave this speech at a meeting in the city of Clermont, France, in order to convince the nobles and local priests from around Western Europe to send their men to join the Crusades. Although no exact version of the speech exists, the following was written by a man who was at the meeting and heard the speech firsthand. So number 1 is factual. Why was Pope Urban II giving this speech? So what was his purpose in giving this speech? Okay, so why don't you pause and answer number 1. Okay, we're going to keep reading, and you'll also notice there's some vocab. So when we get to that word, we will read that over. All who die by the way of the Crusades. This is his actual speech now. So remember, Pope Urban II, he's the one who said, okay, we're going to go on this crusade. We're going to start a war with the Muslims. All who die by the way of the Crusades, whether by land or by sea or in battle, shall have all of their sins forgiven. This I grant them through the power of God, right? So the Pope is saying if you die in the Crusades, you'll go to heaven, right? Your sins will be forgiven. Oh, what a disgrace if such a hated and simple people, he's talking about the Muslims, which worships demons, should conquer a people, talking about the Christians, which has the faith of God and is made glorious with the name of Christ. You need to help those, just talking about the Byzantine Empire. Remember, the Byzantine Empire were the ones being taxed to go to the Holy Land, so they're the ones who asked for this help. Who, with us, follow the Christian religion. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives now fight in a proper way against the barbarians. Again, he's referring to the Muslims. Let those who have been serving as mercenaries, so paid soldiers who take part in a war for money, not for their country or beliefs. So if you've been serving as a mercenary for small pay, now obtain the eternal reward by going to heaven if they're killed in battle, by fighting with us. Let those who have been working on the feudal manors, so if you were a serf, working on those manors, now work for double honor for God. Let those who go to war do so quickly. Rent your land out and collect money for your trip. And as soon as winter is over and spring comes, quickly set out on the way to the Holy Land with God as your guide. So number 2 is factual. How does Pope Urban II describe the Muslims and provide text evidence? So you want to go back in here, and he doesn't refer to them as the Muslims, but we do have those parts, that are italics, letting you know that he's talking about the Muslims. So think about how is he describing them and get at least one piece of text evidence. So pause this video to complete that. Okay, so now we're going to go to document B, kind of get the other side of the story here, right? So we had the Pope, Urban II, who was the Christian Pope, who called for the First Crusade and how he described the Muslims. Now we're going to have document B, Ibn al-Athir, the historical context, so the background on the author and reading. Ibn al-Athir, who lived from 1160 to 1233 CE, was a Muslim historian who wrote a history of the first 3 Crusades, though he only witnessed the third one. So he writes about 3 of the Crusades, but he was only alive during the third one. The passage below is a modified excerpt from his account of the capture of Jerusalem by the Christians during the First Crusade. So he was not there for this. He's writing as a historian. So number 3, conceptual. Why do you think that Ibn al-Athir wrote this? What was his motivation? Think about why would he write this history of the Crusades from the Muslim perspective? What is his reasoning for doing that based on what you just learned about him? Okay, so pause to answer that. Okay, so his actual reading now that we're going to read over. Jerusalem was taken from the north on the morning of July 15th, 1099 CE. Many Muslims were killed by the Christians, who pillaged, so they robbed violently, the area for a week. A group of Muslims hid in the Tower of David and fought on for several days. These Muslims were granted their lives in return for surrendering, so giving up. The Christians honored their word and the group left by night. In the Al-Aqsa Mosque, so one of their holy temples, the Christians killed more than 70,000 people. Among them, a large number of imams, which if you remember, it's like a priest, an Islamic leader, and Muslim scholars, religious men who had left their homelands to live lives of religious service in the holy place. Right, so these were men who he's saying, they were not fighters. They were just innocent, Muslim men, is what this historian says. The Christians stole many things from the Dome of the Rock, if you remember, one of the famous mosques that was built during the caliphates, including 40 silver candelabras, those are just large candlesticks, and more than 20 gold ones. Muslims who left Jerusalem reached Baghdad and told the caliph, so remember the leader of the Islamic land, a story that brought tears to their eyes due to the sadness. They begged for help, crying so that the caliph cried with them as they described the sufferings of the Muslims in that holy city. The men killed, the women and children taken prisoner, the homes destroyed, right? All by the Christians. So number 4 is factual. How are the Christians described in this source? Provide text evidence. So similar to the one you answered above, but now we're thinking about how does this historian describe the Christians and using at least one piece of text evidence. So why don't you pause this video and get number 4 in there. Okay, so part 2, which again, if you are breaking this up into 2 days, this might be a good time to pause this video, maybe write in here what timestamp you're at, and then do part 2 on Wednesday. But if you want to keep going, then obviously you can keep going. So part 2, Socratic Seminar, creating your questions. You will now create questions in order to participate in Thursday's virtual Socratic Seminar based off of the above document and the focus question. Were the Crusades inevitable? So were they avoidable, bound to happen? And again, you're basing this off of the above documents. So A and B, thinking about those 2 different perspectives. And thinking about, were the Crusades inevitable? Do you think that they could have been stopped, or did they just kind of hate each other so much that it was bound to happen? So you need to create at least 3 conceptual questions. So the answer is implicit. You have to infer or interpret using clues from the text. There can be multiple answers and they can all be right in their own way. Sentence starters include how, why, does, what if, what would happen if. Conceptual is also a great time to use a quote. So think about in numbers 2 and 4, you had to have text evidence. This would be a good place to be like, why does the author describe the Christians that way? Or why does the Pope describe the Muslims in this way? And putting a quote there. What would happen if? Thinking about, if certain things hadn't happened, do you think that could have changed things? Okay, so I'm going to go over the debatable too, and then, once the video is over, you'll do your questions. So debatable questions, the answer promotes critical thinking and allows for multiple perspectives, requires people to choose a side and defend it, right? So multiple answers that are against each other. So sentence starters, do you think? Which do you think? Do you believe? To what extent? Would you have? Different things like that. So thinking about, would you have listened to the Pope if you were a Christian? Do you think serfs only joined the Crusades to leave the manor, or did they actually care about the Holy Land? Do you think that the Pope was telling the truth? Okay, do you think that this historian is telling the truth? Things like that promote for critical thinking, multiple sides. And the point of making these questions is that on Thursday, you are going to have to join one of the virtual Socratic seminars, and ask one of your questions, hopefully, or just responding to others, but you do need to be prepared in case you get the chance to ask one of yours. Again, if you're unable to be in the virtual Socratic seminars, there will be some sort of written document posted on your Google Classroom for you to do. But we would really like to see you guys actually in the virtual Socratic seminars. And again, it will count as a point that you either join a Socratic seminar or you do the other document. This document itself is also counting as a point. So make sure you get it done. Make sure your questions end in question marks. Okay, and turn it in, whenever it is completed. So if it's Tuesday and you're finishing up, turn it in. Wednesday, finish it up, turn it in. Okay, so make sure you go do your 3 questions of conceptual and 3 of debatable. And hopefully we will see you all on our virtual Socratic seminars on Thursday.